Hey everyone, I'm here with the very talented Estelle Lucas. Estelle, thanks for coming in and chatting with me.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming in. Estelle, you've been a professional escort for 10 years. You entered the industry as an independent worker charging $800 an hour giving covered blowjobs, which was totally unheard of at the time, and even now is something that I never see. You've got a Twitter following of 10.8 thousand people and an Instagram following of over 8,000, and you're one of Australia's most prominent and highly paid escorts. You've toured internationally, and you've also written a number of pieces about the sex industry, including your latest article, Abused by the System, the Unfair Stigma Surrounding Sex Workers in the Independent Australian. Now, on top of all of that, you're also the founder and creator of Red Fars, an industry resource for sex workers, and I recommend everybody jump online and check that out, as well as Red Cloud Hosting, which is a foster sister friendly website hosting for sex workers. Wow, that's impressive. You've been busy.
Apparently so.
How do you even manage all that, as well as keep in shape and see clients and everything?
When you say it like that, it just sounds like a lot, but I mean, it was 10 years to build all that and do all those things. Doesn't happen overnight. I'm always working, so I'm constantly trying to do things and better myself and better my business, and so yeah, this all just comes out naturally.
Nice. Well, Estelle, I first heard of you when I was 20, and I was actually looking at making the transition from brothel work to private work, and I found your website online and reached out to many prominent escorts at the time, but you were the only one who responded so kindly. We met up and you offered your support and advice, and it was actually you who first encouraged and inspired me to enter the high-end market. And I know that I'm not the only one you've been a source of knowledge and support for. So on behalf of many, thank you.
No worries. It's my pleasure.
We've known each other for a few years now. We were doubles partners for a while, fun times. And I have to say, I just love tuning into your selfies with amazing captions online. They're always so witty. And you've really definitely built yourself a name in the industry with the help of social media. So I want to talk to you about a number of things today, which are actually a combination of my own questions and questions from people within the industry. Unfortunately, I couldn't include all of them this time, but we've summed up the main parts together, I think. So today we're going to cover how you first got into the industry and what that meant for your life at the time, how you define success and what steps you have taken to secure that for your business, what your top strategies are for building regular clientele and how to break through a slow week, and also how you manage showing your face at times while protecting your privacy, and how you manage relationship aspect of escorting. So we've got a lot of topics to cover. So Estelle, why don't you start by sharing how you first got into the industry?
I was 18 when I first started, and I did private massages with a girlfriend, and that sort of evolved into doing other services. Eventually I had to do my own research to figure out how to become an independent escort. I did that, and voila, Estelle was born.
And here you are. So how did you actually first take your step into the massage world? Did you just wake up one day and decide, I'm going to do this, or had you been thinking about it for a while?
Pretty much. I think I was like so poor that I was like, what is the get rich quick scheme?
How can I pay off this debt?
Yes, pretty much. So I figured that no one checks massage people's qualifications if you're doing an outcall. So
very true.
And then I was like, so I could just say that I was qualified and no one would be none the wiser. And because I'd had a girlfriend with me at the time, that's security covered, because we'd be looking out for each other. So I thought, what's the worst that can happen?
So did you start doing it independently with your friend?
Yes, go to a park? And it was actually just for massage. Like it wasn't, there was no sexual element to it.
Wow, but it became sexual. Did the clients ask for it?
Yes, that's why it became sexual.
That is so interesting. I assumed that you would have gone to a parlour or something.
No, I didn't even know I didn't even know the industry really existed, to be honest.
Wow.
It was such a far away world. I mean, my background is Muslim, Turkish, so it's pretty insular, and we don't really talk about these topics growing up or with our parents or family. So I never really got exposed to anything until I exposed myself.
And now look at you.
10 years later.
Totally. So it seems like you've had the independent streak from the beginning then, because I think that most people, and I know that I did, my first step was to go somewhere where it was already set up. I would never have thought to just do it myself instantly. I wanted to, but I didn't have that probably confidence in myself yet, or the skill.
I think the circumstances in which I grew up in, really, you didn't get any brownie points for not having confidence and not being a bit rough around the edges and stuff. So I've had that in me from the get-go, and I've never really let anything put me down for too long or get in my way. And that sort of spark is really good when you're entering this industry, because it just means that no one's going to mess with you, and you also don't trust anyone.
Yes,
because I learned that from a very young age. I'm like, I don't trust anyone, because people have their own self-interest at heart. So that's why that for me was a survival thing, to be independent. I actually wouldn't depend on anyone, because I always thought, well, I'm automatically in a vulnerable position and I don't like that.
Okay, so that's interesting, and I found that everyone's story is always really different.
Of course.
You've explained the how. Tell me a bit more about the why, because that's where I really find that I get into it with people. Obviously, money is something that most people, the easy, but what was the money for you? What did that really represent?
I mean, I didn't want that much money when I first started. I just wanted an extra $100 at the end of the week, or $200, and that was all I needed to get the stress off my... Sort of like, I guess it's the same as having a glass of wine at the end of the day, you know? You just sort of, what if I didn't have that extra 100 or 200? I'd have to cut a lot of corners. I couldn't see my friends. I couldn't, you know, I would be struggling. Something had to give. Yes. And I didn't like that. I didn't feel like that was a fruitful or quality life. And I didn't think it was fair. So I was like, I'm going to make some more money. Somehow, I don't know how.
But I'll make it happen. So in that sense, it sounds like it was more about the quality of your lifestyle.
My lifestyle, yeah. And I hate it when people do say that, like, sex work is a lifestyle choice, because I think it really diminishes the labor part. But that was something that really did attract me at the beginning, because I didn't have a good lifestyle. I was getting sick. I was working full time. I was going to university full time. I was getting really tired, and I just knew that I was going to get more tired as I got older. So I needed to figure out some effective way to have a livable standard.
And were you stressed then as well by the financial pressure
and
to do all those things?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't live at home when I was 18 either, so I'm supporting myself. And then also, you know, this isn't unique to me, but I don't have any dependents. But if you have dependents or family that need to be taken care of, then you want to take care of them. You want to be able to do that and provide that for them. That's what I wanted as well.
I find that interesting, because I think that once you've been in the industry for a while, or people assume that if you start in the industry, it's because you want some big financial takeaway. But for a lot of people, and it was the same for me, it's more about getting rid of that financial stress, that suffocating feeling that you can't pay the bills that you have to pay.
Yes. And I definitely, like, my sort of, if I had to put a symbol to what the point of all of this was to get a house. To me, that was symbolic of a home, which I didn't really have as someone that's just moved out of home at 18, can't go back to my family home, don't really have a corner of the world to call my own. So it was just, that was symbolic of my place in the world. So that's what I was working for. And home, you know, that changes every year, the concept of it.
So would you say that you've achieved that now? Or has it been ever progressing?
I mean, we could get very spiritual about it, but home is where the heart is, you know, as they say.
Yes, true. Okay. Well, moving on, when you did start, I know a lot of us experience some kind of internal conflict about what choosing sex work would mean for other areas of their lives. I know when I started and I went full-time into it, I had a lot of thought around how that would isolate my relationships, not only romantically, but from the people who were close in my life. And that was a big point of conflict and concern for me. What was your experience with that? Was there anything that you were worried about when you took that step?
When I initially started, I mean, my fears within the industry and to the idea of exposure has changed year by year. But initially, what I truly believed was that I was vulnerable to murder by people of my culture, who would take it upon themselves to see justice served or whatever, some like weird backward thing. But it wasn't a far-fetched concept. It really wasn't, for the way that I grew up, and I had seen that people were capable of violence, and why not? if I have shamed a whole culture, why not kill me? So that was a real fear, and that was like, so my life depended on not revealing
That
who
sounds
I am.
terrifying.
It was terrifying. And then also I didn't want to shame my family, because the second worst thing from death is being ostracized. So I didn't want my family to carry the weight of my decision. And then everything else didn't matter to me, because relationships, I had no intention of telling them what I did, because it was just, it wasn't a serious,
it was such a small part of your life at the time.
Exactly. It was such a, I wasn't willing to take on the responsibility of being a sex worker. I didn't feel like I earned that, especially because I felt like I was working quite opportunistically. Yeah,
so it was such like a 1 hour here, 1 hour there.
Yes. Exactly. And I it's not like I was planning on being in the industry for 10 years.
Yes.
I just ended up being. But like once I made that decision, that's a whole other story.
Yes, it changed.
Exactly.
Okay. Interesting. All right. I was really surprised to learn that you entered the industry charging $800 and doing limited services to what you compared to what you do now. So have your rate structure and services changed throughout your career?
Yeah. So I started off without knowing anyone or anything about the industry. So with no point of reference except the things that I see online, Google, I had it in my mind that all the people that worked in the industry were, as stigma says, like drug addicts and diseased and uneducated and all this, because I had no one there to correct me. And I thought all the clients were exactly the same.
It was just a societal concept, basically.
Yeah, so that's all I had to compare it with. So when I got on, I was like, but I'm being educated in university, and therefore, and I don't have any mental disorders. Well, I did, but I hold myself together so well.
But it wasn't apparent walking down the street.
Exactly. And I was like, and I'm young and you know, beautiful and blah, blah. I didn't actually think I was beautiful, but I kind of knew I was.
In comparison to what you thought was happening.
Exactly. So then, with that in mind, I thought I earned that $800 automatically by refuting all the misconceptions about the industry.
Wow.
And then the covered blowjob came because, again, I had that disease-ridden sort of, that information that is often conflated onto the industry, even though it's not actually true at all. So that's why I started the way that I did. Eventually that covered blowjob, you know, that became, I was like, oh, actually, this is not any more of a danger than when I go out at night and hook up with any other person. Like, they're the same people. And then on top of that, I started adding services that I couldn't do before, stuff like anal and stuff.
Yes. If you upskilled.
Yes, upskilled myself. And then I up my rates to reflect those services. And now because of the times and the goals that I have, I've had to restructure my services again. So I've done the 2-tier PSE, GFE structure, which I find is a lot more approachable for clients.
Yes, I think I've experienced that as well, as opposed to the one rate, all-inclusive experience that you had before.
Which is really great for me from like a worker's perspective, because then I can just walk into the booking and I know that whilst if you have 2 tiers, then you've got to do a lot more negotiating beforehand. You've got to do a lot of negotiating and booking if people get really spontaneous about their desires.
Yes, they do.
And then you have to be like, oh, but that's extra and la 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 la. So it puts me in a more work-oriented position, but that's fine. I have a financial goal now, so I need to meet that. I need to do the work.
Nice. Interesting how you mentioned that you walked in feeling like you already deserved that high rate, because I talk to a lot of people who are wanting to improve their businesses, get regular repeat clientele, increase their rates, and they actually come from a point of stark contrast of the opposite, feeling like they aren't deserving of the higher rate.
Yeah, but I'm obnoxious, and I'm also I grew up with boys, so I've got a very male mentality to me. I've never ever let feminine sort of, especially growing up, I didn't let a lot of my, now I do. I've transformed and evolved, but definitely when I was younger, I thought feminine energy and feminine concepts were weak and vulnerable and not good.
Was that a societal thing for you?
I think it was just like, the points of references that I had, the amount of times that you can't do this because you're the girl, and I was the only girl, so I'd be like, no, I'm going to do that. I'm going to do it even better than you. So to even go into the sex game was quite empowering for me, because I'm like, I'm going to do your game and I'm going to beat you at it.
I'm going to make money from it.
Yeah, exactly. Not only am I going to outfuck you, I'm going to outsmart you, I'm going to make more money than you.
It's interesting because I had a similar thing to that. I grew up with a big family of boys. So I was always more like, had more of a masculine energy and the same thought processes. So speaking about your rates and the services that you offer, I think in our industry, I hear often a lot people tending to define success based on how much you're charging. What do you think really defines success for an escort? How have you achieved that yourself, and what steps have you taken?
I really hate saying lifestyle and escorting, because I just don't think there's a huge labor point that's missing. But I think for me, success is being able to live that lifestyle that you want to live comfortably. So lucky for me, I don't have a high maintenance lifestyle, so I don't need to do too much work to maintain it. But if I want to do something, for example, I recently changed my life goals and I want to buy a house. If I want to buy a house, I need to be getting
do
more
the work up front.
Exactly, I need to do a little bit more. But before that, I was quite comfortable working very little because I didn't have big overhead costs and all this sort of stuff. So to me, success is being able to live the lifestyle as comfortably as you can.
Okay.
And that's being able to achieve your goals, as well as being able to feed yourself and feed the people around you. And yeah, that's about it. And what I've done to secure that success is I'm always thinking about my long-term goals.
You're always goal-oriented.
Always goal-oriented, which can be a bit bad sometimes, in that, like, once you accomplish a goal, you're like, all right, what's the next one?
Yes.
And then
but that's, I think, a natural human instinct.
You always got to step back and be like, I got to congratulate myself, I got to celebrate this, I got to tell myself that this is enough, that I've already done enough. So rather than constantly trying to better yourself, which can be quite, it can be tiring. It can really weigh you down.
Would you say you've gotten better at that over the years, and have you seen your business success reflect?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I think I've gotten a lot softer. I feel like that feminine energy has really reignited. I'm less goal-oriented, and that's good, because I will always have that part of me. It's quite inbred into me, so it's nothing that I can fully reverse engineer. But these other aspects, if I can bring them into life, then that means I'm going to have a more balanced lifestyle and a more balanced approach to life. Yeah,
that was the word I was about to reach for as well. It's more balance.
Yeah.
Which balance will depend on where you start. You know, some people might start totally on the opposite end without any clarity or without any goals.
Sure.
Okay. So what advice, saying all that then, would you give to others wanting to make a name for themselves and to create a successful business? Specifically, what advice would you give about increasing a client base and gaining repeat clientele? Because all the inquiries that I get about business success, that's the most common one. How can I increase my client base? What can I do to get consistent clientele?
Okay, so firstly, I think a lot of people look at others as a point of reference, and that's fine. Like, I do that as well. But I do it more, I keep tabs on people mostly to be like, I got to make sure I'm not repeating things. Because once you repeat things, it's not only do you, I don't know, like, if you can imagine being a client on the other side of the computer and everyone looks the same, not only do they not want to book anyone because they can't select, but how are you standing out from the crowd? So I think it's okay to do your own thing. And I think it's really important to know who you are as a sex worker, and that is separate from who you are in your personal life, but to figure out who that is and use that as a space to explore your creativity and your branding and all that sort of stuff. It doesn't have to be serious, it can be really fun, and I think people often do take it very seriously. I see it as like a space for, I'm very business oriented like you, so it's always just like, how can I make this better and blah 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 blah, how can I jazz it up?
But your personality always comes across in your social media, and that's what I think has contributed to your success, because you'll even post a video talking about how lazy you are. Whereas most people would probably think they have to always be on.
I think
you're authentically yourself.
Yeah, I think people are scared to be vulnerable in this industry. I use my vulnerability almost like a shield. to be like, hey, you can't touch me. I've already touched every bit of me. You know what I mean? I've defiled myself way before you got here. And it's like a bit of a twisted way of looking at it, but in terms, and I think that vulnerability is really attractive though, and I think that's why I think I get a lot of repeat clientele. I think because I'm authentic and I am myself. When people like that, not everyone does, but when people do like that, they sincerely do. Whereas if I'm putting up a bit of an act and people fall in love with that act, then I need to keep doing that act, which is draining my resources and my ability to work. And if ever I have a mood shift, which I often do, then that facade breaks, like ice crumbling. So,
and it would affect the quality of the experience.
Exactly. And so I'm more sustainability oriented.
Yeah.
I know that I can't put an act, so I don't bother. I just am myself, and I know that I'm a great person. So it's not like I'm not ashamed of any part of myself. I don't have low self-esteem. I think I'm great the way I am, and I think that shows, and like that's why I get repeat clientele. Okay. Because they're like, oh, she's a real person with real, you know, she actually likes having sex with me, and blah 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 blah, which is true.
So to sum that up, would you say that firstly your adaptability, and you'd recommend others to not only be adaptable but creative, so that they stand out? And secondly, to be themselves so that they're authentic and genuine.
I think so, but not if people are wired different ways. So I think some people really need that division. It would be a mental minefield and put you at risk of being quite unhappy if you gave yourself that way. Like people might see it that way. I don't see it that way, so it's not a problem for me. But for some people, it's very important to have a strong distinction. For me, it's quite the opposite. I want to be more in unison with myself and all parts of myself. So that makes sense for me. It might not make sense for other ones. But if that's the case, if you do need that sort of split personality happening, then you just need to make that distinct and use that as your alter ego.
Yes. So it sounds like awareness is the key here. And you're, in the time that I've known you, you've become better and better at it, but you've always been quite aware of yourself.
Yes. I've been very conscious and very...
And played to those strengths and weaknesses.
Exactly.
Yeah, okay. Given that this industry is a very fluctuating industry, we all talk about those dead times, it's really dead right now, or it's really busy and we're making lots of money. What would your top strategies be for breaking out of a slow week so that you're not always at the mercy of the market?
Well, I would first of all, like, I am a preventative. Yeah, I'm a very preventative person. So I will identify a problem way before it even becomes a problem.
You're not reactive.
No, exactly. So I always set myself up for a slow week. I've already got a buffer ready to go for those slow weeks. So I'm not forcing myself to work or stress or worry, which is then therefore going to affect the quality of my work. I can't hide those parts of myself very well. So I don't bother engaging with those feelings and putting myself in that position. I have to have a buffer beforehand. So when the longest period that I've gone before I was concerned is about 2 weeks to a month is when I'll start, the wheels in my head will start turning and be like, you can't turn a blind eye to this. You need to do something. You need to do something. You need to do something.
Who's that client that I used to see 6 months ago every week?
Exactly.
Let's contact John.
Yeah, exactly. And when that happens, I will just try to be a little bit more engaging on social media. Try to use the platforms that we have available in terms of Scarlet Blue, all that sort of advertising directories. Engage with that a little bit more. Try to do a little revamp. I might even do a special that to reignite interest, or worst case scenario, I might even ask one of my regulars out for a date, which is not something that I would do with someone that I've just met or just had 1 or 2 bookings with, but my regulars know me quite well. I know their schedule quite well. I know what's within bounds and without bounds, so I could be like, hey, I really missed you. I'm going to see you next week. Let's do this. I'll throw in an extra half an hour, which I've actually never done. But I tend to overstay anyway, so yes, that's sort of a vibe that I already do.
Okay, so you'll instigate the meets, but obviously they're still paid.
Yeah.
Okay. So really the takeaway there is to be preventative, so that proactive, so that you're most of the time you don't get to that point where you're freaking out.
Yeah. Not at the mercy of the times.
That's great advice.
Yeah.
Now I know that you aren't totally full face on your profiles. However, I've seen a number of unblurred selfies on your social media pages over the years. Plus, professional photos that have very minimal blurring. I've actually noticed that it tends to change. Like I remember when we did our double shoot, there was some that was barely no blur. Even some photos where there wasn't a blur. So, I'm always really interested when I see girls that are full face, because I've always been a full covered, half blur. I'm always interested, kind of thinking, what's going through their heads? Do they just not care? Is it that they are convinced that nobody who they know will see it? It's always interesting to wonder.
Yeah. So,
firstly, how do you actually feel about having less anonymity? And what do you do to protect your identity? What measures do you take?
So there's a couple of points here. Every time, I always get this on my online activity, people go, why is your face blurred now? Why is it not blurred? Blah, blah, blah. And I'm just like, it's my face. I'll do whatever the hell I want with it.
Very fickle and moody.
Exactly. I'm like, if I feel like doing this, and I have it in my mind that I'm unrecognizable. And I know that's not true.
You would be unrecognizable to someone who wouldn't know you. Yes. Like, I remember back to when I first met you.
Yes.
And we met after I had seen the things online. I would never have been able to spot you on the street. Never.
I've only been spotted once or twice by clients. And it's usually at airports, so they know where I'm going to be.
Yeah.
One, firstly. So then they keep their eye out, and then I fit that profile.
So it's not just because of the face.
No, it's not just because of the face. And those were times where I was more blurred than not blurred. When I went to the States, for example, I blurred my face a lot heavier. So it depends on my environment. That's and stuff.
The legalities.
And then also, so if I tour internationally, I'm going to get a bigger blur. But if I'm at home, I'm not really scared of anyone. Most people know what I do. So I can choose to be lenient. And I think it's a bit of a tease. It's like a nip slip, you know? Like, oops.
A face slip. An eye slip.
Oops. A little blur slip.
Tip of the nose today. How interesting. Well, on that note, how open are you about what you do? Do most people know? Do you introduce yourself to people as an escort? How do you manage that?
So when I decided that I actually wanted to be an escort, so not when I started working, I think those are two different points.
Yes, I would say I had that same very clear distinction. It was a very rational decision.
Exactly. And I was like, okay, well, this isn't just a thing that I'm doing. This is a conscious decision that I'm doing. And if it is something that I want to have a future with, I'm going to need all the support that I can get. So I need to start coming out to people, because I can't do this alone. And I really couldn't. So I just went out to all my friends, and eventually all of them found out. And so everyone knows now. No one spreads that information, because my friends I've known for years. And when I introduce myself, depending on my mood, if I sort of want to
a mood dependence here.
It's like people are like, you're so unpredictable. I'm like, I'm actually quite predictable. You just got to predict the moods.
Once you know what mood, we know what we're going to get. Actually, I've picked up on that over the years. So before bookings, what are we going to get today in the room? Got it. Yeah, get the vibes.
So if I'm a bit like in a conversation sort of mood, like I want to have a conversation, I'm ready for the Q&A, I might introduce myself as an escort. If I want to make someone uncomfortable, I might introduce myself as an escort. But if I'm like, I just want to go past unnoticed today, I'm definitely not an escort.
You'll say something else. Exactly. Okay. So, do you actually have a romantic life outside of work?
Believe it or not.
The money question, the one that we're all dying to know, and certainly one that I get asked a lot of questions about, is the love life. Do you have a romantic life, and are you open about what you do with those people?
Yes, surprisingly.
Depending on the mood?
Pretty much.
Depending on the mood and the lunar cycles?
So basically, I have now gone to a position where I'm solely poly, which just means that I do what I want, which is what I've always done. But it's been very hard to do that in a monogamous relationship.
Yes.
So now I've just made it a bit more official. I'm like, okay, this is what I'm doing. And if you can either respect that, or take it or leave it, you know?
Or get on that.
Yeah, exactly. Because I'm just really, I just don't have the time to cater to people. You know, I mean, I love people and I will do everything to support them and stuff. But when it comes to the terrain of how I should behave or how I should be or how I should do things, I don't like that. I don't like people telling me what to do. I'm like, you haven't lived in my shoes. You don't get to tell me what my job is.
It's with the premise that you get to live life your way and then you'll take care of others.
Yeah, exactly.
Which I think is how it should be.
Exactly. And so, yes, I have a romantic life. It's colourful. It is lively.
I bet it is.
So much going on in that department.
Yeah, we've talked about it so much. So are you open with those people about your profession?
Yes. I find there isn't, like, I've experimented over this idea for 10 years. So I definitely went through a phase where I didn't tell partners, and that was very bad. It was very, very bad.
What do you think was bad about it in your experience?
The reaction that I got from that, from withholding that information.
Once you told them, you mean?
They found out.
They would always find out?
I mean, they found out once that, and I saw that reaction, how it ruined that person.
Yeah.
And probably kickstarted their depression, anxiety, and distrust for the rest of their life. I was like, whoa, I was not expecting
How many men have you turned gay? Let's talk about it.
I was just like, whoa, I didn't even expect that reaction. I didn't even know I wielded that power to have that effect on someone. And then I was like, that's a lot of responsibility. I don't like that. I don't want to be the reason that it's someone's source of pain for the rest of their life. It's not.
Or to see the fallout.
Yeah, exactly. So I was like, I need to be a little bit more honest. So that's fine. I'm happy to do that. But I was scared of rejection, which I had to reconcile in my own sort of way. And then I sort of learned, I went on dates, and sometimes I tell them straight away, and I find that if you do that, they will judge you.
Or they'll instantly segment you as a certain something.
A certain something. They have an idea of what a sex worker is, and that is what you are.
Yes.
Instead of knowing who you are first, and then taking that sex work as a little extra branch.
That's the approach I've always taken too. Is you need to lay the groundwork of yourself as an individual.
Exactly. And so that's why I usually will tell someone when I think that we have the potential to have something serious, instead of just sort of hanging out and seeing if we have a connection. Once I've established there's a connection there and I want them to be a part of my life, that's when I'll tell them what I do. And then I'll be like, okay, this is the blurb. Any questions?
It's just like me, the coming out speech. Yeah. I still remember the first time I did my coming out speech. Yeah. Do you remember your first one?
To romantic partner?
Yeah, to romantic partner, like the first.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I do remember. Yeah.
Fun times.
Tell me.
It was like a Tinder date, and it was our third date, and I was very lucky in that he'd actually had experience dating a stripper before, so it wasn't totally green information, but it was like a monologue. I was like sweaty, I was nervous, and at the end of it, the first thing he said was, so like, do you do everything, like all the services? And I was like, oh, this guy knows what's up. Yes. The answer is yes.
How interesting. Mine was so much different.
Yeah,
I had been camping and LARPing. This is my days of laughing. Do you even know what that is?
I do not know what LARPing is. Is that a sexual service?
Like when you dress up as like elves and dwarves and all that, and you have plastic swords.
Never heard of that. Like Lord of the Rings?
Yeah, okay. Kind of like that. Like reenactment, live action role.
Oh yeah, okay. Like the historical camps and stuff that people go to. Yeah.
I went to that for a weekend, and then I went.
Oh yeah.
One of my many hobbies. One of my endless interests. Okay.
Yeah.
So I did that on the weekend, and then I hooked up with a guy, and we were kissing, and then I went to his house, and then we were laying in his bed, and we had a really great connection, and I really wanted to continue to see him. And so I was just like, I can't hold this deep secret anymore. I'm sorry, I have to tell you. And then I was like, you're stressing. I remember laying in the bed though, and I was like, oh my god, how am I gonna tell him? Oh shit! Like covering my face and stuff. And he's like, what is going on? And something's eating her alive.
Wow, we have really different experiences.
I was like a little bit like crumbling it. And then I told him, and he was like, oh, that's fine. I was like,
right.
And then I didn't leave his house for 6 months.
Wow. You know, what I always like to tell people is I haven't had the coming out speech to heaps of guys, but I've had a number. Not a single one has ever said, no, thank you.
No, and I think the reason why, though, is I often find, I actually found that I did a bad approach in that I would lead them into a challenge. You do not do with men. Because they will always take the challenge.
Yes.
Instead of
it's
saying,
like, you won't be able to handle this.
Yes,
I will. 6 months later, oh, for your position, crying. How many orgasms did you have today? Yeah.
So I needed to be a little bit more insightful and a bit more strategic about how I pave that information, so that I was telling them from a place of honesty and not from a place of, can you handle this? Can you handle all this beauty and amazingness? And of course they're like, yeah, I can do this. And then we don't want to waste each other's time, so just learn how to say things better.
So it's a
more tact.
It's a careful approach now, more selective.
Yeah.
Mine became a lot more selective as well over time. I want to go back to how you mentioned at first that you wouldn't tell them. Aside from how it made the other person feel, was it difficult for you to withhold from somebody? Did it make you feel anxious?
No,
it was fine for you.
I was like, because I reasoned it for a couple of reasons. The guy that I was seeing at the time, he was from a really rich family. He went to private school and all this sort of stuff. Like, he wouldn't have known anyone who would even know anyone that was a sex worker. Like, he was just so off the grid that way. And I was povo. Like, I was poor and all this sort of stuff. And how could I explain that to him? If I said to him, I'm in need of money and therefore I've started this work, he would have just been like, I'll just look after you. Which goes beyond the point. Yeah. I don't want to be looked after. I want to work for my money. I want to earn my money. I want to be able to look after myself in this world. And he would have just looked after me, which I would have not liked. So there was no use going there with that conversation because it just wouldn't have ended up the way he just wouldn't have understood. It was just, he had no point of reference.
How interesting.
So I didn't feel bad telling him something that was going to hurt him.
Yeah.
I had no guilt. And then I saw what happens when you don't tell someone, and then I was like, okay.
So it was more the fallout.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I was like, okay.
So we've covered it a little bit, but overall, how has your profession affected past relationships, notably serious ones? Once you've told them and you've stayed together, what have you found has been the difference?
I do think that most of the time they're sort of like, oh yeah, I can handle this, and then they say that it's, just another part of my life, but then they really start to fall for you at some point, and then it starts grinding on them and they don't quite know how to express how they feel, whether that's insecurity, inadequacy, whatever, or some
social
offspring,
stigma,
whatever it is.
I've
had boyfriends who have been like, I'm okay with all of this, but how am I ever going to introduce you to my family or my workplace? You're so open about this. So then they have to take on that lateral stigma. That starts to become a reality, and eventually what happens is the work becomes too much for them to handle. And I'm not willing to negotiate when it comes to my work. I'm like, sorry, but this is giving me a lot of value and offering me a lot.
I'll leave it.
Exactly. And you're actually replaceable. Sorry, but it's true.
I will find someone who gets it better.
Yeah.
So has that been, you think, in your experience, the biggest struggle point or obstacle is that you are so open and they can't handle that, as opposed to the actual job?
I think the way that I remember once my last boyfriend that I had, my last and only, my last monogamous relation.
Time.
Yeah. I remember I was talking about work and I was all excited because I'm always excited when I talk about things that I like. And he just had this aghast look in his face, and I'm like, why do you act as if it's the first time that I've told you I'm a sex worker? You do this every time. Your face just drops every time I start talking about work. And he was like, I'm not angry that you're a sex worker. It's how much you enjoy it that disgusts me. And I'm like, so did you want me to go to work miserable, dragging my feet? Why would you wish ill on me?
So is that been the hardest part, you think?
I think maybe that caption perhaps is in essence how they feel. They feel like they're not doing enough to make you stay at home.
There must be a reason.
Must be them. Exactly. And I think if you're insecure or oriented or inadequacy oriented, then it will always come back to that. And I don't know, I like to think that I've given them enough communication and avenues to address those things, and it's just a lack of character that really is.
Well, it's their own struggles ultimately.
Often I do have friends that remark, and they're like, that partner was very unremarkable.
You're like, don't I know it? What I found with sex worker relationships, because I've had a number of partners now working, is it always magnifies the insecurity that's already there. People make the mistake, especially partners, of explaining all the reasons why sex work is the problem. But every time for me with a partner, I've been able to trace it back to an insecurity that was already there within them, and this just exacerbates it.
Yeah, I think
it's an easy out.
Yeah,
it's an easy out to be like, it's the sex work.
It kind of reminds me of you get some really shitty men that use their culture or their religion as excuses for their behavior. It's like, actually no, you just chose that behavior, and you're using your culture or your religion to not be accountable for it.
Yes.
And that's not good enough. Sorry.
And you'll know that if anybody who's been in a relationship and stopped for a period of time, which I have done, and you still have the same problems.
Yeah, I've done that as well, and it's just not a good idea because the problems will resurface in different ways.
Well, they actually become worse.
Yeah.
Because you now have, for you, the added frustration of, I thought this was going to fix this, and you become also resentful, perhaps about the money aspect of it, or about the fact that you had to change your life. So that's always been my advice to people in relationships, that you need to get down to really what is the underlying issue. Yeah. Okay, so saying all that, what would your top tips be for handling work and relationships?
I think communication is really important. I mean, it depends on how you're going to approach it. If you're going to tell your partner,
let's assume that we're telling your partner, you need to communicate. Unfortunately, you have to do probably a little bit more labor in that relationship than your non-sex working counterparts, because, like you said, these undergrowth of insecurities are all going to be inflamed. So you're going to be there. Okay, feelings, they're not that bad. I will reassure you. There is a lot more work involved.
And a lot more validation. And no, I love you. And I remind you that I love you. I chose you. I'm with you again.
It's all about you. You're the best.
Exactly. So you can do a lot of that sort of work. Communication is really important. I think it's also really important not to, it is a game, it is a bit of a dance being in a relationship, and you can't give way. Like if someone's trying to ruin the dance by stepping forward,
or putting rules on your dance.
Exactly. Yes. You have to be like, no, this is a duet.
Yeah.
And we both have turns of leading and switching, you know. If someone starts to, I think you will lose yourself in a relationship if that starts happening. You need to give yourself the respect to say, no, that's not acceptable, and create those boundaries and securities. It will save you time, it will save you hardship, and it will save them time and hardship as well. So you actually don't want to feed that toxic relationship. If there's signs of that coming up, then that mold, I suppose, like an infection, you need to be like, nah.
Then you have to
cut it off. Yeah.
Okay. So to sum that up, you'd say firstly, communication.
Yeah, honesty.
Secondly, accept the fact that you will probably have to do more work, especially up front. Yeah. Just being one of the perhaps downsides or realities of choosing sex work. Yeah. And thirdly, set your boundaries, I'd say early on, right? Yeah. And establish them. Yeah. Okay. Well, Estelle, I would like to thank you and acknowledge you for speaking with me today, and also for sharing your experiences, advice, personal stories, and wisdom. I know that a lot of people within our community will really find these insights helpful, especially because a number of those questions came directly from our community. So I would like to thank you and also end by asking you one last question. Yeah. What is it that you are most grateful for during your time as an escort?
I guess it's sort of the unsung heroes of the sex industry, which are, you know, those friends that, you know, have called you up when you've called them up after a bad booking and have held space. And there's definitely, you know, senior sex workers like on top of me that I've had to go to and ask them for advice. And especially when I started out, all those people that gave me that information, like thank you, because then I can pass on that information and build on that.
Which you're doing now.
Exactly. But if I didn't have access to that, then I would have never been able to do the things that I did and pass it on as well. So there's like a lot of fairy godmothers out there. They're unsung heroes, people who are fighting for better protection laws and all that sort of stuff, which I also try to do. But all those people I'm really, really grateful for. There is a tidal wave of hate always pressing against the industry, and there are people, there's always people there protecting us, and some of them are a little bit more elusive.
Well, I'd like to point out that you're one of them, especially for me. You were the first one to really stick your head out for me, so thank you. Well, that wraps up our time today. I'm really excited for all the things that I know are to come from you. So thank you, Estelle.
Thank you for having me.
There you have it, everyone. Thanks for tuning into our interview with Estelle Lucas today. There was so much more I wanted to ask Estelle about. I did not want our interview to end. Her extensive history in the industry makes her a wealth of knowledge, and I really hope that what we spoke about today is able to help you on your path and in your life. You can connect with Estelle on Instagram and Twitter, and if you aren't already part of the Red Files community, check it out right now. You do not want to miss out on the super helpful and free resources it has for its members. Go to redfiles.com.au. My name's Isabelle Fox and I am the owner of Fox Girls. We offer boutique management for independent escorts. If you're looking to progress your business as an escort, I am now taking on new clients in Sydney. So if you're in the industry in Sydney, please get in touch with me. I would love to speak with you. You can connect with me on Twitter or Facebook as Isabelle Fox, and you can also apply for a free mentor call with me at foxgirls.com.au. You can send me an email on isabelle@foxgirls.com.au as well. Thanks again for listening in.